Hello, everyone. My name is Sara McKenna, and I am a candidate for a dual Bachelor of Arts in Legal Studies in Spanish with a minor in Anthropology and a letter of specialization in social justice. I'm a student in the Commonwealth Honors College at the University of Massachusetts Amherst, and today I will be presenting my senior honors thesis, How Family Policies and Programs in Spain and the U.S. Impact Gender Equity. In my senior honors thesis, I compare family policies in Spain and the U.S., and I have several motivations for doing so. First, I have connections to each country. I was born in the US, was raised here, and have lived here almost my entire life. But I also have lived in Spain for about 6 months total and will be returning to work there in the upcoming fall for about 9 months. During my most recent time in Spain in 2019, I lived with the second of my two host families and was able to experience the day-to-day life of a Spanish family. Applying knowledge I gained from my courses abroad about public policies, I watched the interaction of this family with the reality of the policies that they lived under. From this, I gained a deep understanding of how Spanish families differ from American ones, and noticed a difference in the way that the U.S. and Spanish governments support their populations, and especially their families. Herein, Spain is generally considered to be a welfare state, whereas the U.S. is not. From my experiences and deep appreciation for socialist-style policies implemented in Spain, I hypothesized that Spain's family policies would have a discernible impact on the measures of their gender equity, considering their objectives and expansiveness, whereas counterpart policies in the U.S. would not, considering their motivations and lack of expansiveness. To begin, the two countries have somewhat opposite evolutions of policy. In the U.S., the New Deal and the Great Society policies of the 1930s and 60s were the most recent grand policy measures designed to increase and expand state support of Americans and their families. During this time, several programs, including Social Security, Aid to Dependent Children, which later became Aid to Families with Dependent Children, Medicare, food stamps, federal public housing programs, and fair labor standards, among others, were initiated. However, since that time, little has been expanded and most programs have actually contracted. Beginning with Reagan and continuing with Bush and Clinton into the 2000s, social programs in the U.S. have changed as the country began to prioritize moving people off of benefits. Eligibility is no longer tied to need, but rather to work. People must work or be transitioning to work to be eligible for almost any social program or benefit in the U.S. And in the past 20 years, almost no new family policies have been initiated. Switching now to Spain's policy evolution, the fall of Franco set in motion the transition to democracy. With the beginning of a new age in Spain, policies and programs began slowly and later accumulated over time, gaining speed, traction, and breadth. The Spanish legislature began with establishing legal rights of gender equality and soon moved on to establishing policies that, too, like the U.S., would encourage workforce participation. However, as women in Spain were the population most removed from the workforce at the time, and more so than in the U.S. at the same time, many of the policies were designed to help them manage family life while also having a job. Over the past 2 decades, incremental increases have been made in Spanish policies, less the recovery period following the 2008 financial crisis, which hit Spain particularly hard. It's important here to recognize the difference in motivations for welfare policies in these two countries to understand where these policies have landed. In the U.S., the end goal of welfare is to get someone working so they will no longer be dependent on the welfare. In Spain, the end goal is to get someone working and keep them working as they remain dependent on those programs. While they are clearly different and have taken different paths to arrive at their current state, both the U.S. and Spanish policies have undergone further divestment since the 2008 financial crisis. Spain was beginning to rebuild certain policies that had been deconstructed for austerity. However, the coronavirus pandemic has caused a disruption in both countries, which effects will not be known for many years. How do each of these policies play into family roles in each country? Well, in Spain, many families continue to rely on the familias model, which is common in many Mediterranean countries, in which the mother has primary responsibility over the home and elders tend to provide childcare and household assistance in informal ways. However, as women have entered the workforce in very large numbers over the past couple of decades, though policies have supported them, family responsibilities have not shifted nearly enough to accommodate this, producing the phenomenon dubbed in Spain the supermujer, or superwoman, a mother who works all day and does household tasks all night. As you can see here, there is shares of unpaid work between men and women across the world, with Spain and the United States highlighted, and men and women's leisure time also highlighted for Spain and the US. In unpaid labor, Spanish women are estimated to work almost double the amount of their male counterparts. They complete on average 66%, or about 289 minutes a day, of child care and household duties versus a man's 146 minutes a day, according to the OECD. In the US, women have a slightly better share of work with men in the household, though it's not near 50-50. Women still continue to express that they feel they face much more responsibility than men in this respect. And in unpaid labor, the OECD estimates for the US that women are estimated to work more than 1.5 times the amount of their male counterparts. So better than Spain, but not much better. In terms of time and labor impacts, U.S. policies do little for lightening the load of home or work responsibilities. As previously stated, most benefit programs require recipients to participate in work, so there's no alleviation of laboral requirements there. Across the board, there is no guaranteed paid parental leave federally, though families who can financially manage are entitled to 12 weeks of unpaid leave through the Family and Medical Leave Act, though this leaves out many families who can't afford to do that. Companies and cities have begun to pick up the slack by implementing their own piecemeal benefits to attract women to their locales and corporations. In the same way, financial benefits in the U.S. tend to be too little for too few people. Most families report that their family SNAP benefits run out before the end of the month cycle, and the primary financial benefit for families in the U.S. is the Earned Income Tax Credit, which comes once a year and is not eligible for many families. In Spain, women are guaranteed paid maternal leave for 16 weeks and fathers for 15 days. Additionally, both parents are allowed to work part-time to care for children up to 12 years old without the threat of losing their job, and they receive wages commensurate with time worked. This allows both parents to share the family laboral responsibilities more so, and allows the burden of workplace responsibilities post-birth and while children are young to be lightened. Of course, like all of the U.S. benefits, it still requires one to be employed prior, so unemployed people are not eligible for these benefits. In terms of financial impacts of social programs in Spain, families can receive 100 euros per month for children under the age of 3, and children over the age of 3 are eligible for state-funded childcare. So most family policies with financial benefits in Spain cover the cost of childcare either through this benefit or through state-funded childcare, which again helps to lighten the family responsibilities financially. Before explaining the measures of gender equality in each country, I should address that my research aims to examine the impact on gender equity. However, it's almost impossible to measure equity, therefore I've used measures of equality combined with intentional policies to examine their impact on equity. Here you can see the rankings of Spain and the US relative to other countries in Western Europe and North America for overall gender parity, and also can see their global scores. In Spain, recent advances in female representation in government and improvement in political empowerment have propelled their gender parity score, as calculated by a 2020 World Economic Forum report, substantially. In 2020, the World Economic Forum ranked Spain as 8th of 153 countries in the world for gender equality overall. As one of only 10 governments with more than half of their ministers being women at the time of the report, in 2018, Spain was considered to be the most female-centric government in the world. Though it ranks as one of the best countries for female representation in government, it notably is yet to be governed by a female head of state. For health, education, and economic markers, women fare well in Spain, though the country still has significant disparities, including a much lower female labor participation rate and much higher female unemployment rate. In unpaid labor, as I mentioned, Spanish women are estimated to work almost double the amount of their male counterparts. In the U.S., gender parity is far from being achieved in political and governmental representation. The U.S. has still failed to fill even a quarter of its congressional seats or cabinet positions with women, and like Spain, the U.S. has also yet to have a woman head of state. According to the World Economic Forum in 2020, the U.S. ranked 86th of 153 countries for reaching gender equality and political empowerment, which, despite its success in other areas, has brought down its overall ranking of gender equality to 53 of 153 countries, a significant decrease. In regard to health markers, the maternal mortality rate for women in the U.S. is treacherously high among other similarly developed countries. Educational attainment, however, has reached virtual parity, and American females have surpassed males in secondary education enrollment and have shot ahead in tertiary education, where women surpass men by far. Though it's fallen slightly since the last report, the U.S. succeeds most in economic participation and opportunity equality, where it's ranked 26th of 153 countries. Women do have a lower participation in the workforce than men, but also have a lower unemployment rate in the U.S., though this may have changed with recent unemployment trends related to the pandemic. In unpaid labor, as I mentioned, women in the U.S. are estimated to work more than 1.5 times the amount of their male counterparts. In both of these measures, it's crucial to recognize who's been left out. Most measures of equality are solely broken down globally by male and female genders and sometimes by race. There's a lack of specific extensive measurements of equality for many groups of parents, including LGBTQ plus parents, especially transgender parents, non-binary parents, gender nonconforming parents, queer parents, and also parents who are low-wage workers, immigrant parents, and parents of color. When I began my research, I had hypothesized that the expansive Spanish social policies I had seen would have a strong impact on measures of gender equality and promote it, allowing it to achieve a higher level of success than in the US, which has measurably less social supports. However, I did not find that family policies impacted levels of gender equality. Instead, my findings have demonstrated that gender equity in political participation has allowed for the expansion of these policies, because we know that representation matters in creating effective and representative legislation. I've also found that regional and historical influences, as well as large world events, have played a large role in the proliferation or lack of in family policies. In the US, this was the Great Depression and World War II, and in Spain, this was joining the European community and ending the Franco dictatorship. The coronavirus pandemic will likely have an impact on what I've found, as the U.S. has taken more action than Spain in the way of economic stimuli and financial packages for families over the past year, including multiple stimulus payments, increased child tax credits, and many long-term improvement proposals. Time will tell if these supports will be maintained after the immediate crisis has ended. Thank you.